This is the Bangladesh Liberation documentary by Jonah Castle, James Perkins, and Mason Fees. This is Jonah Castle. For a long time, Britain ruled India. This was a time period called British India or the British Raj. India was a part of the British Empire until 1947 when partition took place. Partition was the process that gave India its independence. The independence of India was much more confusing than it may seem. The partition took place because of long, complicated talks between British government and elite Indian figures with their own political interests. The final borders of India and Pakistan were created in only 6 weeks, creating India, East Pakistan, and West Pakistan.
How did the Cold War shape the Bangladesh Liberation War? Bangladesh's independence took place in the broader context of the Cold War. The main thing that you need to know is that India and the Soviet Union were allies and that the US and Pakistan were allies. This also happened during the Nixon administration, who were in support of the efforts of Pakistan. Mason will cover more on this in the detail.
This is Mason Fees. The war itself began on March 26, 1971, after the Pakistani military launched a violent crackdown against civilians, students, and political leaders in East Pakistan. This operation was meant to stop the growing independence movement, but instead it sparked a full-scale war. By December 1971, tensions between India and Pakistan escalated, and India officially entered the war on the side of the Bangladeshi forces. The conflict moved quickly, and after just 2 weeks of fighting between India and Pakistan, Pakistani forces surrendered on December 16, 1971. This surrender officially ended the war and led to the creation of the independent nation of Bangladesh. To understand the Bangladesh Liberation War, we also need to look at the Cold War context and the role of global superpowers. During the Cold War, many regional conflicts were influenced by larger powers like the United States and the Soviet Union. In this war, both superpowers acted as a hidden hand, meaning they influenced the conflict without directly fighting in it. First, the United States supported Pakistan. And at the time, Pakistan was considered an important American ally in Asia. And another major reason was the Cold War rivalry between the Soviet Union. Pakistan was a part of American-supported alliances designed to stop the spread of communism. The U.S. mostly intervened through diplomatic and military support. Pakistan had already received American weapons and military equipment before the war, and during the conflict, the U.S. also sent the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise into the Bay of Bengal. This move was meant to show support for Pakistan and potentially pressure India, although it did not change the final outcome of the war. On the other side, the Soviet Union supported India, which indirectly supported Bangladesh's independence movement. The Soviet Union saw India as an important partner in Asia and wanted to counter the influence of both the United States and China in the region. The Soviet Union provided India with weapons and military equipment, which helped India defeat Pakistani forces quickly. The USSR also used its veto power in the United Nations Security Council to block resolutions that might have forced India to stop its intervention. In the end, even though neither power directly fought in the war, their support shaped the geopolitical environment around the conflict. The United States backed Pakistan for strategic Cold War diplomatic reasons, and the Soviet Union supported India to expand its influence and counter American power. This makes Bangladesh Liberation War a clear example of how Cold War rivalries influence regional conflicts around the world.
This is the regional expert, Jonah Castle. Um, East Pakistan and West Pakistan were separated by just about 1,000 miles of Indian territory. At the time, the Bengali Muslims hoped that because they would be a part of a Muslim majority party, Pakistan would allow them to have greater freedoms than when they were still under British rule. Unfortunately, they were wrong. Internal dynamics quickly changed, and Western Pakistan quickly began to oppress East Pakistan. First oppression would be with the national language. Although Bengali was the language most people already spoke, the government would attempt to make Urdu the official language in 1948. After years of student-led protests, both languages would be recognized in 1956. Dhaka was the official capital of East Pakistan, and that is where all of the initial bombings took place from the beginning of the war. Dhaka was a city that relied heavily on agriculture, and many lived in the city with very little people living in rural areas. It was a major cultural and economic center. Bengali culture was heavily marginalized as well. It was mostly seen in women as they were discouraged from wearing the sari, which is a traditional regional attire associated with Hindu women, and the work of the famous Bengali poet was banned. Discrimination also took place because even though Pakistan's first constitution gave an equal share in the National Assembly between West and East Pakistan in a push for autonomy, it was revoked when Muhammad Khan took power. From there, East Pakistan was left out of many things, including aid and help from other places. And Western Pakistan got a higher concentration of supplies. In a push for autonomy in 1966, the Awami League Party was formed and led by Mujibur Rahman. They demanded regulation and autonomy, but were ignored by West Pakistan. In 1971, West Pakistan pressured Yahya Khan to prevent the Awami League from getting into power, which promoted the war for East Pakistan, which was in dire need of liberation from West Pakistan. The fighting and conflict were so bad that many fled to India for their own safety. The fighting broke out in March of 1971 with Operation Spotlight. Dhaka was the main target of all these bombings in Operation Spotlight, and in August of 1971, they signed a treaty of friendship with the Soviet Union, and the war was finished later in December with a surrender. And the East was finally free, creating what we know as Bangladesh. Between 300,000 and 300 million people lost their lives in this war.
After the war, Mujibur Rahman became the first prime minister of Bangladesh, and he killed the Bihari Muharis because they were in opposition to the Bangladeshis. The Hamudur Rahman Commission was a judicial inquiry established in December of 1971 by Pakistan, and they claimed the death toll to be about 26,000 people. The relationship between the United States and the region after the war got worse. The U.S. government had resumed selling Pakistan military equipment, a process that had been disrupted by the previous 1965 Pakistani war. Washington wished to avoid a second war between Pakistan and India, but also feared that Pakistan would be greatly weakened if its eastern province seceded, and so supported Pakistan initially. However, the action against the mass protests in East Pakistan was well publicized and widely condemned, which limited the extent to which the government was willing to help with the Pakistani government to prevent the division of its country. This also led to a decline of U.S. influence in South Asia and India. The past can only be remembered by Bangladeshis while the rest of the world forgets its occurrence. But there have been multiple attempts for the United Nations to recognize the genocide of Bangladeshis, and Geneva Sachita Hake, the Deputy Permanent Representative, recently demanded recognition of the Bangladesh genocide of 1971, an attempt to hold the Pakistani army accountable for its past cruelties and casualties. The Hindu American Foundation reports that 11.3 million Hindus have fled Bangladesh due to religious persecution and intolerance between 1964 and 2013. An additional 230,000 continue leaving annually, furthering the Hindu Bangladeshi diaspora. On October 14, 2022, Representative Steve Chabot and his co-sponsors introduced Resolution 1430, recognizing the Bangladeshi genocide of 1971, to the U.S. House of Representatives. The legislation would recall and document crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide. As Resolution 1430 waits at the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, the urgency for action intensifies. Bangladesh, a country founded by solidarity, has been shredded by hatred. Even if the times have changed, the intolerance and violence of 1971 have evidently remained. This repetition of history proves that there is much to be communally cognizant of, much to globally hold accountable for, and much to locally embrace changes within. It is more than just recognition, it is genocide prevention. This is all done by James Perkins.